So hi everyone and welcome to this beginner's yoga flow class. We're going to start today in a comfortable seated position. So if possible, come to bend the knees and sit back onto the heels, placing the palms down onto the thighs or onto the knees. If this isn't comfortable for you, you can come into a cross-legged seated position. And if you are coming into this pose, just make sure you have a block or a cushion and pop it underneath your seat just to elevate the position and straighten the spine. So find a comfortable position for you. And when you get there, just come to close the eyes. And when you come into your seated position, just take a few moments to take a deep inhale in. And then really try to elongate the exhale as we calm our nervous system and calm our breath. So just take a few deep inhales and a few deep exhales. Trying to calm and ground yourself into the practice and letting go of the day thus far. And just try to notice where the mind is at today. The busyness of the thoughts. And notice the breath, the pace and the intensity. And on each exhale, just let go of anything that's happened this far and anything that you need to do after the practice today. On the next inhale, keeping the eyes closed, just raise the shoulders, and then on the exhale, roll the shoulders back and down. And one more inhale, raising the shoulders up. And exhaling, rolling the shoulders down. And just take a few more moments to ground yourself into the beginning of the practice, taking a few deep inhales and really elongating the exhales. Tucking the chin slightly down just to elongate the spine. So on the next inhale, just slowly blink open the eyes and just welcome yourself into the practice today. So you're going to stay in your position and I'm just going to move myself so you can see me a little better. So what we're going to do is we're going to start to energize the feet and bring some energy into the toes. So on our next inhale, we're just going to bend the toes, sit onto the knees and just tuck the toes under. So if you can have a look at my toes here, I'm just tucking the toes under, stretching out the toes. And on the exhale, I'm going to sit back onto the toes. Okay? So moving all the way back. Now, if this is too much pressure onto the toes, you can just keep rising up and then moving back down just to bring some warmth and some energy into the toes. So see how that feels for you. If it's comfortable, you can take a few moments just to sit in this position and close the eyes and sit back onto the toes. Remembering to take some deep inhales and some really deep exhales, tucking the chin down to elongate the spine, relaxing the shoulders back and down. And play around with either stillness or moving up and down as you move the toes and move the knees. Good. And on the next inhale, just blink open the eyes and come back to sit onto the heels as we began the practice today. Good. Okay, so we're going to begin by creating some warmth in the spine and in the shoulders. So what I'd like you to do is raise yourself up onto your knees. On the next inhale, just outstretch the left leg so it's parallel with the long edge of the mat. So your foot is at a 90-degree angle, okay? The right knee is underneath the right hip, and we create a really nice straight spine by inhaling the shoulders up and rolling them down. Good. So just take a few moments to find a really nice comfortable position here, taking a few deep inhales, Maybe moving the neck, moving the head from side to side. Okay, so on the next inhale, we're going to take the right hand and place the right palm onto the mat. So we're going to create a side stretch here. We're just going to check that the right knee is under the right hip still and that the left foot is still at a 90-degree angle. On the next inhale, we're going to raise the left arm up towards the sky. Taking a deep inhale and a deep exhale. When we're in this position, we're going to remember to keep inhaling and exhale as we go through the pose. So while we're here, we're just going to wiggle the fingers, create some warmth and energy all the way from the right hand to the left hand. Take a few deep inhales and a few deep exhales. And then just play around with moving the head from side to side. So really gently on the neck, looking up and looking down. And finding if there's any stiffness there. And just oiling the neck, warming up the top of the spine. Good. Okay, so on the next inhale, we're just going to place some pressure in the left toes and the left foot. So we're really going to push down, okay? So we're really going to ground ourselves into the ground. Stretching up, imagining that there's pieces of string to each finger of the left hand, really stretching upwards. And if it's not comfortable on the neck, we can look downwards towards the right hand. In this position, we're finding stillness and we're engaging the core. So we're not letting the core sink outwards and arching the back. We're engaging the core so we have a nice straight spine. On the next inhale, we're just going to lift the left toes, left foot slightly off the floor. And on the exhale, we're going to place it down. So what I'd like you to do for the next few moments is just play around with lifting the foot, lifting the toes off the floor. And if there's pressure on the neck, just look down towards the right hand. Maybe still wiggling the fingers, finding that energy, picking the left toes and the left foot off the floor. And just playing with the balance onto the right hand, onto that right knee. On the next inhale, we're also going to lift those left toes off the floor and the left foot, and we're going to create some stillness here and see if we can balance. If this is too much, just lower the left foot back down, absolutely fine. If we can, we're going to stay here. We're going to wiggle the fingers and the toes. We're going to take a deep inhale in here. And on the exhale, we're going to lower the foot down. We're going to look towards the right hand. We're going to lower the left hand and we're going to come back into standing onto our knees into our central position. Take a deep inhale in here. And a deep exhale. One more deep inhale. And a deep exhale. Good. Okay, so we're going to do the same on the other side. So just find a really comfortable, strong position standing onto the knees. We inhale, raise the shoulders up, and then we roll them down. We tuck the chin down slightly and we create a really nice straight spine. We maybe just wiggle the head from side to find our stillness, find our position. Good. So on the next inhale, we're going to stretch out the right foot to become parallel with the mat. The right foot is at a 90-degree angle. So just play around with finding that position, finding what feels good. Now at first it might be that the little toes and the outside side of the foot wants to come off the floor. Try to really push and ground down into the outside of the foot, into the small toe, and really push down to find strength. Good. Take a deep inhale in here. On the exhale, use the left palm to lower down and create a really nice side stretch here. Just notice how this feels. Notice a stretch perhaps in the side of the body, perhaps in the left arm. And just use the head and the neck just to move the head up and down, oiling the spine and oiling the neck. Good. On the next inhale, we're going to raise the right arm up towards the sky, wiggling the fingers. Taking a deep inhale. Taking a deep exhale. And from here, we're also just going to play around with the positioning of the head once more. So looking down, looking up, and just noticing how this feels on the neck. Remembering to inhale deeply and exhale completely. Good. Come back to your still position. On the next inhale, we're going to play around with lifting the right toes, the right foot off the floor, and then just placing it back down. So we're just playing with balance here. So we can wiggle the right toes, we can wiggle the right fingers. We're playing with balancing, putting our weight onto our left hand and our left knee. If this is too much, we can stay in stillness. And if not, we can keep moving, playing with the balance, energizing the neck, the feet, the legs, the arms and the spine. Good. On the next inhale, we're going to come back to stillness. And on the next exhale, we're going to lift the right foot off the floor, hover it off the floor. Either look up towards the right hand, or if this is too much on the neck, look down towards the left palm. Perhaps wiggle the fingers and the toes. Can we stay here a few more seconds? And on the exhale, place that right toe, that right foot all the way back down, and then we're pressing into the outside of the right foot. Good. On the next inhale, come back to center. Standing onto the knees. Take a deep inhale, close the eyes, roll the shoulders up and roll the shoulders down on the exhale. Take a few more moments to take some deep inhales in your own time and some really deep exhales. Try to have the palms facing outwards. Find a really strong grounding position. Okay, and on the next inhale, we're just going to blink open the eyes. So now what I'd like you to do is place the palms of the hands just onto the hips, okay? Or if it's more comfortable, you can place them slightly higher onto the waist, whichever feels comfortable for you. And we're just going to play around with warming up the hips and the pelvis. So to begin with, we're just going to arch the spine and then slightly round the spine. And we're going to play with pushing the pelvis forward and back. So we're tilting the pelvis and then we're pushing it forward. So we're just warming up the pelvis, but the lumbar spine in particular. And just come back to center and just notice how that feels. So we're going to coordinate that with the breath now. Okay, so hands back onto the hips or onto the waist. So inhale, push forward. We're slightly rounding the spine. Exhale, we're arching. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale forward. Exhale back. Inhale forward. Exhale back. And then slightly faster if you can this time. Just going with your own breath and moving at your own pace. And just notice how it feels and then start moving side to side. So side to side, forward and back. And now start to create some circles and you can change direction. Now you might feel slightly silly when you're doing this, but it's not about how it looks with yoga, it's about how it makes you feel. So we're warming up the spine, we're warming up the hips, and we're warming up the pelvis. So side to side, forward and back. Taking a deep inhale and taking a deep exhale. Good, and just find stillness now by just closing the eyes for a moment. Just take a moment to notice how you feel, noticing the breath. Good, and on the next inhale, just blink open the eyes. We're going to move to tabletop pose now. So we're going to move to the long edge of our mat. So if you just want to walk the knees, walk the feet back, we're going to come into tabletop pose, which involves bending onto the knees. Hands are underneath the shoulders. Knees are underneath the hips. So the back is like a tabletop and we have a straight spine from the crown of the head all the way down to the tailbone. Now I appreciate when you're looking at the screen, you're having to perhaps tilt or angle the neck so it might not be very comfortable, but eventually in a moment we will come to a straight tabletop. So we're going to find our really nice straight spine, and we're going to push up into the hands to find strength. So we avoid kind of sinking down into the hips, into the lower back. We push up from the hands and we engage the core slightly. So just play around with the difference between pushing into the hands and into the shoulders and letting them sink. So just feel the difference. So if we let the elbows bend and we let the lumbar spine sink, okay, it's quite a different position, it's quite a different feeling. So when we push strongly into the hands, we push also into the shoulders and we engage the core slightly. Take a few deep inhales and a few deep exhales. We feel much stronger here in this position. We're grounding, we're finding strength from the floor. On the next inhale, we're going to stretch the left leg out behind us and we're going to flex those left toes. So the left toes and the left knee is pointing down towards the floor. The eyes and the nose are pointing down towards the floor. We're looking in between our hands. Take a deep inhale in here. Deep exhale. Deep inhale. Deep exhale. And then we lower the left knee back towards tabletop pose. Good. So just find your grounded tabletop pose again. And on the next inhale, we're going to straighten out the right leg. So inhale. Straightening out the right leg. The toes, the knee and the hip is pointing down towards the floor. We're looking in between the hands. And we're creating strength and warmth in the spine. Deep inhale. Deep exhale. Deep inhale. Deep exhale. And lower that right knee down back towards tabletop pose. Okay. So if that feels enough for you, you can keep repeating that for the next exercise by straightening out the leg and pointing the flexed toe and the knee down. However, if you'd like to take it a step further, we're going to come into a plank pose. So we're going to keep the hands exactly where they are. They're underneath the shoulders, we're pushing up into the hands and we're grounding and finding strength. On the next inhale, tuck the left toes under and straighten that left leg out. So we have the left toes pointing down, the left knee and the left hip. So we avoid pointing out towards the side, it's really strong. And we use our toes and the ball of our foot to root and ground into the floor. So just play around with that, okay? So feel the difference between when the foot is not rooted and grounded, it feels really unstable. Okay, so take a deep inhale in here and a really good deep exhale. On the next inhale, we're going to do exactly the same with the right foot. So we're going to stretch out the right foot and we're going to come into plank pose. We're going to make sure that the feet are about hip width apart. So you might just want to move your feet into the correct position and we come into plank. Lower the knees down for a moment, back into tabletop pose. Well done. So that was our first plank pose today. Take a deep inhale in here and a deep exhale. On the next inhale, we're going to come back into our plank pose. So inhale, straighten out the right leg this time. Exhale by grounding the toes down and finding a really strong, stable position with the feet and with the hands. Take a deep inhale in here. Exhale, straighten out the left feet and the left leg. So while we're in plank position, we want to avoid sinking down, sinking the bum down. We will also want to avoid pushing the bum upwards. So we're going to try to find a straight spine here. Place the knees back down. Take a deep inhale and a deep exhale. One more deep inhale. One more deep exhale. Okay, we're going to come into our third and final plank today. So we're really going to work on the alignment here. So inhale, outstretch that left leg and really ground the toes down. Take a good deep inhale and a deep exhale here in your own time. Try to engage the core to find strength. Push up into the hands. Inhale, straighten out the right leg. Come into your plank pose. Avoid the bum sinking down. Avoid the bum pushing up. We're creating that really strong, straight spine. We're pushing up into the hands and pushing up into the feet. Take a last deep inhale in here. And exhale. Come back to tabletop pose. And now we're going to come into child's pose. So for child's pose, we're just going to walk the hands back, to sit back onto the heels. Our forehead and our chest melts down towards the floor, and we close the eyes. We take a few moments to steady the breath here, calm the nervous system, and just ground ourselves back in line with our breath. And on the next inhale, just walk the hands back, and we're going to come back into our tabletop pose. So from here, we're going to actually come down onto the mat. So whichever is most comfortable for you, you can use your arm muscles to create some strength. So if you want to, you can use the muscles of the arms to come all the way down. Or if it's more comfortable, you can just find an easier way to get down to the floor. So whichever is more comfortable for you, we're going to come down to the floor and we're going to start really working on warming and strengthening the spine. So on the next inhale, I'd like you to just place the palms down in front of you, just towards the edge of your mat. And we're going to come into a low cobra pose. So feet and legs are about hip width apart, hands are about shoulder width apart, and the chest is just reaching forward. The head is reaching forward. Take a deep inhale in here, and take a deep exhale. One more deep inhale, and a deep exhale. Good. Okay, so this is our low cobra pose. From here, what we're going to do is just melt the chest down, and we're going to walk the hands out to the side of us. And we're just going to play around with how this feels for now. So we have small arches in the fingers. The head and the chest is slightly raised, but not fully off the floor. And we just think about how that feels in the arms and the shoulders. So this could be a really deep stretch in the arms. And you might just want to play around with moving the head from side to side. If this is quite easy for you and you want to intensify the stretch, you can just walk the fingers out even further to really create a deep stretch in the spine and in the shoulders. So just play around with the fingers, play around with creating arches and flattening the hands, and really think about how that feels for you. Take a deep inhale in here. And on the exhale, move the hands back to cobra pose and flatten them down, coming back in. Take a deep inhale in here in cobra, and a deep exhale. On the next inhale, we're going to walk the hands forward. We're creating arches in our fingers. So try to avoid looking at the screen here and just think about how this feels for you. Now this might be a really deep stretch in the shoulders. And you might just want to tuck the chin down and look towards the mat a little bit more, just to take the pressure off the back of the neck. And then just play around with walking the fingers forward, maybe flattening the hands, taking a deep inhale and a deep exhale, and perhaps just moving the hands forward and back. On the next inhale, walk the hands back to cobra, take a deep inhale in here, and then take a really deep exhale. On the next inhale, walk the hands diagonally to the mat. So finding another stretch in the shoulders, working on arching the fingers, flattening the fingers, walking them forwards, walking them back. And just really noticing how that feels on the shoulders and on the spine, perhaps moving the neck from side to side. And it might be that you notice a real stiffness in the shoulders, or it might be that you notice that there's a lot of movement and flexibility in the shoulders. So you just notice where you are today without judgment. And on the next inhale, bring the hands back to cobra. Take a deep inhale in here and a deep exhale. Good. On the next inhale, we're going to walk our hands back to tabletop pose. So we're coming back onto the knees, we're coming back into our tabletop pose. So from here, we're now going to play around with our first downward facing dog. So as we said before, the hands are underneath the shoulders, the knees are underneath the hips. And on our next inhale, we're just going to tuck the toes under like we did at the start of the class. And we're just going to rock forwards and back onto the toes. So the toes should be nice and warm at this point. Taking a deep inhale and a deep exhale. Come back to tabletop pose with the toes tucked under. What we're going to play around with now is just floating the knees off the floor and pressing our weight into the hands. So on the next inhale, float the knees off the floor and just notice how that feels. Now that might be enough for you today, and that might be what you're playing with today. Lower the knees back down on the exhale. Inhale again, float the knees off the floor. Exhale down. Now either continue with that, floating your knees off the floor if that's enough for you, or if you'd like to take it further into downward facing dog, we inhale, float the knees off the floor, and then we exhale, we try to straighten the legs by just pedaling out the feet. And we just notice how that feels. And we observe that there might be some stiffness in the hamstrings, in the feet and in the back. Try to just relax the neck down and try to look towards the feet if that's comfortable for you. And just take a deep inhale in here and a deep exhale. And try to find stillness now by just stopping the pedaling and finding a still position in your downward facing dog. Shaking out the head, yes. And shaking out the head, no. And then on the next exhale, bring the knees back towards tabletop pose. Good. Deep inhale in here. Deep exhale. Good. We're going to try that one more time. So if you're hovering the knees off the floor, you play around with that. If you're coming into downward facing dog, we tuck the toes under, we inhale, we push into the hands, we walk and pedal out the feet, and we come into our downward facing dog. Pedaling out, finding some movement, creating warmth in those hamstrings. And if this is your first downward dog, or your first downward dog of the day or the week or the month, you might find there's a lot of stiffness in the hamstrings and perhaps in the knees and the hips. So just be mindful and observe that and try not to push too hard and accept where the body is at today. So inhale, find stillness. Exhale, just take a few moments to shake out the head. And on the next exhale, you're going to bring the knees back towards the floor and you're going to come into your child's pose by sitting back onto the heels, melting the chest and the head forward, walking the hands forward. Take a few deep inhales and exhales. And on the next inhale, you're just going to walk the hands back to your tabletop pose. Just noticing how your tabletop perhaps feels slightly different to the middle of the class. Perhaps you feel slightly warmer in the shoulders and slightly warmer in the hips. And we're just going to finish the class today without stretching the legs just one more time. So inhale, straighten the left leg out, toes, knee and hip is pointing down. Pushing up into the hands. Now if this feels good for you, you stay here and you find a really nice grounding steady pose. If you'd like to take it further and play with balance, you inhale the right hand and arm off the floor and you play with your balance. You try to create a straight spine. Look downwards towards your mat. Take a deep inhale. On the exhale, come back to your tabletop pose. Good. We're going to do the same on the other side. Inhale in here. Exhale, take the right foot and the right knee off the floor. Angle it down towards the mat. Flex that right foot. Stay here if this is nice for you. Or if you want to take it further, inhale and take the left arm, the left hand off the floor. Play around with your balance, engage the core. And on the exhale, come back to tabletop pose. So from here, we're just going to sit back onto the heels and then swivel round into a seated pose. So just come to the front of your mat and just bend the knees. Bring the palms out in front of you, and we're going to slowly roll onto our backs just to finish the practice today. So take a deep inhale in here, and as you exhale, just roll down vertebra by vertebra all the way down. Really using and engaging the core to slowly move all the way down. The shoulders will come last, and then finally the neck and the head, and just try to avoid rushing. Take a deep inhale in here. And on the exhale, just straighten out the legs. Closing the eyes, feet are hip width apart. Palms are facing upwards. Make sure there's plenty of space between the arms and the body. Take a deep inhale and exhale out through the mouth. One more inhale in through the nose. Out through the mouth. And just take a moment to really melt and sink into the mat. We come into Shavasana to allow the body to absorb the practice, to absorb the movement, and to process what's happened during the practice and the day thus far. So as you inhale and exhale, try to let go of the practice, any judgments or anything that you couldn't do today. And accept yourself where you are today, and thank yourself for coming to the mat and practicing. Try to relax the forehead and the eyebrows, the crown of the head. And perhaps try to tuck the chin down and just elongate the spine if that feels comfortable for you. And with each exhale, just slowly melt a little bit more into the mat and allow the weight of your body to be held by the earth. Relaxing the shoulders, the hips and the feet. Relaxing the whole body from the crown of the head, the forehead, the face, all the way down, the shoulders, the arms and the hands, all the way through to the spine, the stomach and the hips. And finally down from the thighs to the knees, calves and the hamstrings, the ankles, all the way down to the feet and the toes. Take a deep inhale in here. And a really deep exhale. And if you'd like to stay longer in your Shavasana today, then please feel free to take a few more moments. Take a couple more minutes to really feel the effects of the practice. And if not, then just start to wiggle the fingers and the toes, just gently, taking deeper inhales and deeper exhales. Perhaps just wiggling the hips side to side and the head. And then just come to place the palms of the hands over the eyes. And then just slowly blink open the eyes into the palms. Coming back into the space. And gently removing the palms off the eyes. And then just going to roll onto one side. So perhaps use your left arm just to angle yourself and use the right knee to push yourself over onto the left side, coming up into a seated position very gradually. So you just want to allow the blood pressure to restabilize again in a slow position. Coming into your seated position, so either cross-legged, or you can go and sit back onto the knees as we started the practice. Take the hands into prayer at the chest and say Namaste, well done. Thank you for practicing today.